Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Good afternoon, Seattle. This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio, and today I have the pleasure of inviting to Afternoons with Monique a sociologist expert in the area of mental health and criminology. Professor Karen Snedker is from the Seattle Pacific University. She has a PhD in sociology and had been exploring and researching various fields of study. Her work takes her all the way to the UK. Back here in Washington State, she had studied feminist sociology, adolescent sociology. She had been in the legal system testifying and helping our mental health criminal justice system in deciphering some of the message that society had kind of thrown upon us to ponder about how mental health affect an individual through the criminal justice system. And perhaps we can talk today with Dr. Snedker about her point of view and how she may have some suggestion about how to improve that system. Please welcome to my show, Afternoons with Monique, Professor Snedker. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? So, Professor Snedker, it's such a pleasure to have you on. I've been wanting to talk to a mental health expert, and especially the area of sociology that you study, quite vast and extensive. And I know you published numerous books on different subjects over the years, and now recently you have a new book coming. So welcome to my show. Oh, you have to take yourself off mute. Uh-oh. Okay, so what I would suggest you do, sometimes this happened to me, shut the computer down if you're not able to take yourself off of mute, and then restart and re-log in. Sometimes that helps. Okay, so while you're gone away, I'm going to share with our audience a little bit about some of your work. Okay, so while Professor Karen Snedker is offline and restart, I will share with you about some of her interesting work that I got a chance to learn. So give me a second here. So she had been, she had studied homelessness in Tent City over the last, within the last decade. And we all know about the homelessness issue in Seattle and the Tent City that Mayor Bruce Harrell is trying to address. It would be interesting for us to ask her opinion today about whether she has any solution that she can offer. She had studied, so her research is interdisciplinary, and she addresses mental health, homelessness, crime and violence, and neighborhood effect. Her published work has appeared in sociology, geography, demography, public health, and crime academic outlets, including the American Journal of Sociology, Criminal Justice and Behavior, and American Journal of Health Behavior. And Dr. Snedker's recent book, Therapeutic Justice. Oh, there is Karen, Dr. Snedker's resume. We can't see it quite. Oh, there you go. That's better. So she has a PhD in sociology and MA in sociology, BA in law and society, and from New York University and University of California, Santa Barbara. And she's been at the Department of Sociology from as a professor and associate professor there since 2012 at Seattle Pacific University. And before that, she was at the University of Washington as a clinical assistant professor, child, family and population health nursing, formerly Department of Psychological and Community Health. So her experience in mental health, according to her CV, is quite vast. And Dan, can you pull up her peer review publications? Yeah, the next page. So she had a numerous work on peer review that had been peer reviewed by credible, reputable organizations and publications. And I've had a chance to peruse her CV, which is 5 pages, the more after the second page, that talked about her various work in mental health. And particularly interesting is her work with the criminal justice system, where she explored, and I think she's still researching and writing about this. She explores how the mental health sufferers is typically being processed and treated. And I think I haven't had a chance to. Oh, there you are. Uh-oh. We're not having luck with the Dan, that could be you. I don't know. Last time, I don't know what's going on, but we can't hear Dr. Snedker's voice still. Uh-oh, that is going to be a dilemma. So while you're trying to get that to work, I'm going to continue to share with our audience some of your accomplishments and credentials that you had a chance to send over to the station prior to the show. So she is currently working on her next book in collaboration with Dr. Jennifer McKinney, also at Seattle Pacific University, on homelessness in Tent City. Okay, so whenever you speak and I can hear you, I will let you know. So keep testing that system. All right, so Dan's helping you in the private chat comment. If you follow that, he might have some. Dan is our engineer and producer who help us with the technical issues behind the scene. So she's currently working on her next book on homelessness in Tent City. And she is a mental health expert for the courts. And she can speak specifically about that in a little bit, as well as more broadly about mental illness in the criminal justice system, such as policing, courts, and corrections. She had been published on the Seattle Times recently, and the New York Times on the issue of homeless camp in Seattle. So that is a very broad topic, and we cannot wait to have Dr. Snedker share with us on what she learned and researched and studied in her field. So macroscopically speaking, I will ask her in a little bit when she can speak, when we can hear her, about her bird eye view of how the mental health issue in our country, in the United States, compares to the world population. I want to have a macroscopic view of how we do comparing to the other countries all around the world. I also will ask her, let's see, what I plan to ask her after she share with us her view about how Seattle and then Washington State, how we fare comparing to the rest of the world in terms of mental health treatments and problems. And I'll also ask her about her work at the UW and Seattle Pacific University, and the books that she had written. Let's see, I'm going to pull up some of them here and share with you while we are waiting for her to join us. So let me pull that the list of books that Dr. Karen Snedker had written. So she had published, let's see, some of the peer reviews that she shared with us on her resume there, which is a kind of small print, so you might not be able to see if you're watching the show and not just listening audio with audio. So she had written a research paper in 2018 jointly with Natalie Williams, Durga Gimer, about fear of violence during armed conflict, trauma, risk, and resources as determinants of fear. That is published in Social Science Research on page 71 and republished in 2018. And then she had also collaborated with Lindsay Beach and Katie Cochran in 2017 on a research published in 2017 called Beyond the Revolving Door, Incentives and Criminal Recidivism in one mental health court, published by Criminal Justice and Behavior, page 44. And then she also has collaborated with Jennifer McKinney again in 2017 on another publication called in 2017, Hosting a Tent City, Student Engagement and Homelessness. Now, this is all before the homeless crisis of 2020 during quarantine and had ballooned up into the current and hopefully will be resolving soon with the new leadership at City Hall, led by Bruce Harrell. And then she also, in 2000, going back in time before her study in homelessness, she also had studied about adolescent mental health, neighborhood stress effects on emotional distress. Neighborhood stress effects on emotional distress, published by Youth and Society, issue number 48, and that was published in 2016 and pre-published in 2013. And before that, also in 2016, Unburdening Stigma. I'm going to pause for a second and ask Dan to maybe, I wonder if it could be possible on his end, but I don't know. All right, I'm going to let them work the mic there and get Professor Snedker online. You know, Professor Snedker, if you have an iPhone or a phone that can be used instead of a computer, try that. That might also be another route that we can. Oh, I hear something. I'm hearing something when you turn the phone on, I think. All right. Well, moving on to Professor Snedker's CV. So in 2016, she also published another research called, oh, here we go. All right, we see another point of view. And maybe it is Dan. Okay. Yeah. Did you actually, Dan? Can you unmute Professor Snedker's cell phones? Yeah, but Professor Snedker, can you turn on that cell phone one more time, and let Dan unmute you on there? I bet you would be able to join us once that happens. Yeah, just click on the StreamYard link again and try to come in, and it will echo a little bit at first if it does have a sound, but sound like you quite mute on this side. All right, so I'll let you take care of that, and don't worry, I'm just going to go down on some of share with our audience your research on mental health here. 2016, Professor Snedker also published Unburdening Stigma: Identity Repair Through Rituals in Mental Health Court. Now, what's interesting about some of the work that Professor Snedker had done, and I definitely will want Dr. Snedker to come back, Professor Snedker to come back on my show. And I had this thought even before she came on today, that her knowledge in the mental health arena is so diverse that we would definitely want to have a two-part episode, second part episode to this, a follow-up, in order to explore all the different topics that she had studied in the past and at the present. So I can hear something from
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. You want to pause? Yes, there you go. Perfect. Okay.
I'm on my cell phone now.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank goodness we can hear you. Okay, so I was sharing with the audience about some of your work in the past, and it's quite interesting. I had a chance to read it prior to joining the show here today, and you had covered quite a bit of different field study, from adolescent mental health to feminist sociology, and you covered mental health in the UK, as well as done numerous research. And so I was saying that, even if the mic was working perfectly, I think this should be a two-part series where, we talk about some of the stuff here today about, your point of view and any thing that you can offer about the intensity and the homelessness issue that you're currently studying. But more than that, I've been wanting to get someone like you on the show to explore mental health issues, which is a burgeoning crisis in our country and our community today. So let's hear from you. First, can you give us a bird eye view of mental health in the United States relative to the world, and then specifically in Seattle and Washington State?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Monique. Can you hear me despite all those noises?
I can hear you. There is some echoing on the other side. Possibly you might have to log out of the other, the computer one.
I think it's better now. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So you're absolutely right, Monique. Mental health issues is a serious problem in this country, but it's also a worldwide problem. So if we think about people who suffer from mental illness, most experts from the CDC say it's about 1 in 5 individuals, and World Health Organization puts that number about 1 in 4 in the world. So the problem is the world, there's a big range. So we actually, 1 in 5 is actually, we overperform in some ways, because some key countries are the drivers of those lower, those numbers in the world. So it's a big issue in the United States for certain. The numbers are about the same in the state of Washington, a little bit more than 1 in 5. So a recent report came out from the Seattle Times, their wonderful series on mental health, that said that Washington state was the 6th highest for cases of mental illness. So it's definitely an issue that really needs to be addressed.
I have a question, Professor.
Yes.
If I may. So who's 1 and 2? We're number 6 in mental health in the US.
Oh, according to the report published by Seattle Times, Utah and Idaho, that's 1 and 2, followed by West Virginia, Indiana, Oregon, and Washington at number 6. This is data from the Seattle Times.
Right.
And the work I do is less so on the general mental health issues of the population, albeit those are very important. I particularly study that people with mental illness, particularly serious mental illness, are overrepresented in the criminal justice system.
Right.
And so those numbers are even higher for people in jails and prisons. And it's particularly acute for those in jail, that is, those serving on misdemeanor or lower level offenses. A much higher proportion are suffering from mental health issues.
Right. And I suspect that overworked American, overburdened parents with, the lack of health and child care, as well as not enough time with children because we work a lot of hours and don't have a lot of time spending raising kids. That could be why we are overperforming in the world mental health map. And Seattle, with its rain and dreary weather, I'm sure has some contributive effect, I venture.
Well, I think there's a difference we have to think about between mental health and mental well-being, which we should be talking a lot about, and serious mental illness. So there's a distinction there that's important to make. And so in terms of severe mental illness, I think that we have to look at broader inequality in society and the failing of some of our other social institutions, particularly, as you mentioned, a limited mental health care apparatus. And that's a big part of why we see overrepresentation, not just in the general population, but then in our individuals who are in the criminal justice system. So it's a reflection of in some ways the failed social institutions and the weakening social safety net that is related to those higher rates, I believe.
Right. It's such a fascinating area. In my past, I was a financial expert, and the psychology of the market, the stock market, and all that. It's a reflection of how the country or the world feels, their confidence and their mood as a collection of it reflected in the stock market. So now we delve into the individual and the subgroup of that bigger picture. And when I look at mental health in Washington State and Seattle and some of the studies I'm sure you are an expert in, I'm always perplexed at how, some of these studies, and we have so many smart people, how come we haven't had a system that can really, really make a change? And we talk a lot about it, but policymakers, research and field studies and grants and funding, all of these things, why can't we just make it work?
Well, Monique, it's one of the reasons I wrote this book that I did, because I saw that mental health courts, these very specific court innovations that deal specifically with people who have mental illness and are in the criminal justice system, they're not perfect, and they're no panacea for all the problems that we just talked about, whether in mental health or in crime, but they can work. And they can actually get people connected with treatment and staying in treatment and managing their mental health. It's often never just mental illness. It's also, in many cases, poverty, unstable or no housing, lack of social support, a whole host of other things. The courts that I studied provide some of that support. And that's why they can make a difference in many of those people's lives and reducing the number of people who are in the criminal justice system in the future.
What are those programs or that the judges order people to do that you think would be helpful? I'm sure, I'm quite ignorant in this area. So if you could elaborate and share.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book is that we don't know that these, as a public, we don't know that these kind of courts exist.
Right.
Mental health courts are specific courts, there's treatment courts, to respond to people who have serious mental illness that is in some way, directly or indirectly, linked with their criminal behavior. So it's a way to reduce recidivism or reoffending, and it's a way to enhance public safety. So these kinds of courts are voluntary. Individuals have to opt into these courts, but they also have to be found eligible and amenable to be in these courts. And so it's for people usually with serious mental health issues and diagnoses, but it's also people who are at the stage where they want to get involved in treatment, or they've done it before and now they're ready to recommit. So there has to be a willingness on the part of the participant. But these kinds of courts only work, like you mentioned before, with a good judge and a good team.
Right.
Defense attorneys and prosecutors and probation officers and social workers who really work collaboratively to help the particular participant individually with his or her needs around mental health, around housing, and a host of other issues. So they get them into programs like supportive housing, treatment, inpatient and outpatient. And one of the things they really do well is they monitor people and they bring them into court. They provide them with some structure that is sometimes absent in their lives. But it's not just the structure, it's the support behind that.
The follow through, the follow up after. I see. Can you share with us very quickly, because we only have a few minutes, maybe 1 minute left, if Dan is being generous with us, about tent city and homelessness in our community?
Absolutely. So it's no surprise to anyone who lives in this region that we're seeing more and more people living in tents. There's different types of tents. There's people living in isolation in tents, in clustered tents. And what I particularly study are people living in sanctioned tent communities like Tent City 3. So these are self-managed, self-governed environments where they have rules and expectations, and they really work together in a functioning community for those that are that are homeless, but now can live together in a tent encampment. And they can be very, very positive for the people living there. But the data also shows they also help with the region or the neighborhood where they live in, because they are invested in their reputation and they're invested in making sure that the area is safe for them as they're living there, but also for the residents in that location. So sanctioned tent encampments, I think, can be a really powerful part of a response to homelessness in our city.
Well, folks, we are running out of time, but I am going to have Dr. Karen Snedker coming back. Hopefully she will say yes. Can I get you a commitment on that? To share more with us about her various work in these very important areas of our lives. Next, we're going to have Shattering the Glass Ceilings, 50th episode coming up in the next half an hour. And my next week episode is with Mr. Phong Nguyen, a Vietnamese American who was an immigrant but came to the U.S. some 30 years plus ago. And he's going to share with us about his immigration story, celebrating Asian Pacific Islander Month, which is where we're at in May here. Dr. Snedker, thank you so much for coming on Afternoons with Monique and Rainier Avenue Radio. Please stay tuned for the next episode. And Dr. Snedker, stay on with me as we sign off, and I want to chat with you a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Monique. It was my pleasure.
Okay, thank you.